Story 1. You don't overcome it. You endure it. Sometimes it's a month-to-month struggle. Sometimes it's a minute-to-minute challenge. The key is to keep moving forward. Story 2. I have struggled with this issue for over a decade, so I can say that it is more about developing coping strategies than trying to overcome it completely. The most effective strategies for me have been therapy, getting a dog which gives me a reason to get up every morning, and always having something to look forward to, such as an upcoming movie, event, trip, or a new book from a favorite author. Story 3. Honestly, adopting a shelter cat helped me a great deal. I knew she needed me, and she kept me grounded and motivated. As a result, I started sleeping better, eating better, and exercising. It all started with her. Story 4. Eat healthy, non-processed foods. Avoid any foods with refined sugar. No alcohol. Follow a high-protein, low-carbohydrate, and moderate-fat diet. Get outside for at least 30 minutes every day and enjoy the sunshine whenever possible. Engage in activities like walking, running, cycling, or swimming 3 to 5 times a week, with 5 being ideal. Focus on any cardio or endurance work that you can consistently maintain. Listen to music. Be kind to everyone. Practice gratitude. Try to let go of resentments. Incorporate discipline into your life. Discipline means keeping the promises you make to yourself and others. It all started with a commitment to healthy eating and fitness for me. I wish you well. Additionally, do not forget one of the most important things. Get a dog and love him or her as much as you can. Story 5. I took a significant amount of vitamin B and did not have any issues for several years. A couple of months ago, I noticed I was feeling unusually anxious and upset for no reason several times a month. I started taking a high-quality vitamin B complex in early December, and I finally began to feel better again. I ran out of my multivitamin in July and did not replace it until December. Vitamins are very important. This may not be everyone's issue, but I thought I would share in case it helps someone. Story 6. 7 years of therapy led to the discovery of an ADHD diagnosis from childhood that nobody had told me about. The right medication, supportive friends, and a determination to never give up changed everything. Therapy taught me that I didn't have to hate the aspects of myself I once loathed. The medication helped my brain function more like that of a neurotypical person. My friends now have children, and I look forward to seeing them grow up. On my worst days, I couldn't bear to hurt myself because of the empathy I felt for my mother. Some days, it really is that simple. There is always someone who would miss you, even if it's just me, a stranger on the internet. I spent 7 years trying to understand why I didn't love myself, and I finally reached a point where I could look at the parts of myself I disliked and choose to love them because I want to live. I want to love. I want to have a good life. The idea of should is misleading. If you ever find yourself thinking you should be doing something, recognize that it's not your true self speaking. It's a voice telling you that you are not enough. You are enough. You are worthy just by being who you are. Once you believe that, things become easier. It takes time, effort, and courage, but you can do it. Working out can simply mean taking a walk. Eating right can mean remembering to have a meal or 2 a day. We are bombarded by the concept of should. You are good and deserving of love and life simply by being yourself. I understand it takes time and effort to truly believe that, but I have found it to be true. And honestly, medication can make a significant difference. It takes the edge off and allows me to do the work that is essential. I'm sending you love and wishing you luck, even though I don't know your name. We are in this together. We've got this. Stay strong. Don't let negativity bring you down. Story 7. Oh, it still shows up, but I am no longer suicidal because of a lot of therapy, some antidepressants that actually work for me, and I am no longer in the situation that made me suicidal in the first place. Story 8. In my opinion, you never really beat depression. It's similar to alcoholism in that it remains present and can resurface when certain triggers occur. The key to managing it is to focus on the present, what you can control, and to distract your mind as much as possible. Otherwise, you risk getting stuck in an endless loop. Work, exercise, hiking, positive socializing, family time, spending time with animals, playing video games, and traveling are all great distractions to help you get your mind off the difficulties you may be facing. Story 9. I suffered from depression throughout my teenage years until I was 20 or 21. What worked for me was stopping the medication that wasn't really helping. I changed almost all my life habits, including my diet, sleep, and physical exercise, and I gradually rewired my thought processes. Took time, but the effort was worthwhile. I'm sure it is not the same for everyone, but this approach helped me. Story 10. I went to therapy and got out of the toxic and stressful household I was living in. I got a lot better. I still struggle with household tasks, and I have the occasional day spent entirely in bed, but suicide is out of the question, and I'm able to feel true happiness again. It's possible. Please don't give up. Story 11. I changed many aspects of my life. I moved cities and returned to university, which completely transformed my journey. I started running extensively. As someone who previously never exercised, I began doing 10-kilometer runs every few days. This was the only activity that had a significant positive impact on my mood. That was a challenging period in my life, and I am grateful to have moved on from it. Story 12. Gaining a purpose in life can involve discovering a hobby you are passionate about, pursuing a job you love and want to excel in, nurturing a relationship with a partner you care for, or starting a family. Every person in the world needs a sense of purpose. Story 13. Treatment with therapy and medication is important for managing bipolar disorder. While the disorder cannot be cured, I can achieve some stability. With the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor antidepressants and therapy, I have made significant progress. Today, I am better equipped to handle the depressive episodes associated with the disorder. The diagnosis is crucial for me. I understand that these are just episodes, and the depression will eventually lessen. Story 14. It's a long story that revolves around sobriety and medication, which is not typical antidepressant selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. I have bipolar disorder, and I also need to stay physically active. Story 15. Finding things and people in my life that bring me joy can certainly bring a smile to anyone's face. You'll easily forget why you were feeling down in the first place. Story 16. I received 40 rounds of electroshock therapy and took a significant amount of mushrooms. However, my depression was caused by a brain chemistry issue rather than external stressors or trauma. Story 17. Finally getting on the right combination of medications for drugs twice a day. It took nearly 4 years, but I found out I have bipolar disorder, and I had to navigate this on my own without support. If someone had made the actual appointments for me, it would have been much quicker. Instead, I had to push myself into doing it alone, trying different medications and dosages without much improvement. I had to maintain motivation after what felt like years of setbacks. Getting started is the hardest part, and it becomes even more challenging when you have to begin anew every day. Story 18. I believe the most important aspect is finding a counselor you connect with. I also took Wellbutrin, which worked well for me. A combination of therapy and medication, along with consistency and time, truly makes a difference. Group therapy is beneficial as well. Just knowing that others are experiencing similar challenges can be very comforting. Having a living example of someone who has overcome similar struggles and is willing to share their experience was also very enlightening for me. Story 19. Figuring out I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and autism. I am also studying philosophy, science, and literature. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors helped minimally. Remember to expand and develop your skills. Endure the suffering, and you will grow stronger. Story 20. Vitamin D, exercise, and plenty of water are essential. Start the day with cold water and a towel on your face and head. You would be surprised. Story 21. I started going outside more, taking small steps at a time, such as cleaning my room, giving myself a nice compliment in the morning, and discussing my medication with my doctor. Story 22. I hope I can put this as succinctly as possible, but there's no single fix that cured it, and it also took several years to come to a point where I felt I was tackling it. Baby steps and time got me to this point. I know everyone hates being told to go to the gym, But let me elaborate further on that because I know it's not as easy as it sounds. I struggled with depression for around 17 or 18 years and am in my mid-30s. There wasn't one specific day I can point to and say, that's when something specific completely obliterated my depression, and everything has been perfect ever since. It's always going to be on the back burner. All the things that once overwhelmed me with feelings of utter hopelessness are still things I know now. I still feel hopeless and get consumed by a numb sadness from time to time. I make room for sadness. It is a valid emotion. I have kept a journal over the years and remember reading one from my youth where I could actually point to several entries where the depression started creeping in. When I looked back through my journal in recent years, I also pointed to a period when things began to lift. I poured so much sorrow into those books, and I still do. Something in particular that stood out was the baby steps I took to form healthy habits, with time and consistency. Starting small is key. I challenged myself. Just get dressed and step outside for 10 minutes. Coming home and getting cozy was the reward. I set a small goal each day and allowed myself to feel like a champion for accomplishing it, even though no one could understand or appreciate the effort it took for such a minor accomplishment that others can do 100 times a day without a second thought. Developing good habits takes time and baby steps. Forgiveness when we occasionally slip back is essential as well. After several weeks of just focusing on getting dressed and stepping outside, I noticed my walks became longer and longer. After a couple of months, I'd walk with my sad music and a storm in my head for hours, returning home feeling lighter. Movement and fresh air turned out to be key for me. For the past year, I've actually been going to the gym consistently. It didn't start there. It began small a few years ago with just stepping outside for a few minutes as many days as I could, then steadily increasing that length over time. So for anyone struggling with depression who's tired of people telling them to go to the gym, try starting small when it comes to movement and fresh air. Really as small as you like, but do it as many days in a row as possible. When there comes a day or week where it feels like too much, give yourself rest, forgive yourself for breaking your streak, and remind yourself you can pick it back up. It will feel more familiar to you than when you first started. Depression had made me stagnant and heavy, but there came a point where being idle to curb some of the physical pain I felt no longer felt comfortable. I figured, since I'm already uncomfortable despite doing nothing, I might as well be uncomfortable while doing something. Trying to dig my way out has been a long journey of considerable effort. Starting small and watching those daily goals build up over time, despite spells of dysfunction, ultimately made an impact on my frame of mind. I never thought I would, or even could, be someone who actually goes to the gym regularly. It astonishes me compared to how I was before, and for so many years too. Started small and it took time. Story 23. I couldn't tell you the day, month, or even year when it happened. It's the accumulation of all my efforts. I was in middle school on the edge of being institutionalized and had attempted to seek help a couple of times, despite taking medication and undergoing therapy. Then I realized that no one is going to fix it for me. These medications can only do so much. I am the only one who can prevent myself from engaging in depressive thought patterns. I am the only person who can make a change and stop identifying with self-loathing. What a lot of people don't understand is that depression is addictive. It's indulgent. It makes you weak and convinces you to succumb to hopelessness. You just have to keep fighting it until one day you look up from your shoes and realize that the past few months haven't been that bad. Healing is possible. I am happy now for the most part. Story 24. I have managed to overcome my struggles and have barely been affected by them for about 2 years now, after having been suicidal at one point and spending the last 15 to 20 years in self-loathing. My key to improvement was accepting the problems I had with myself. I felt like a failure, struggled with self-confidence, and had difficulty being around people. I constantly reflected on all the mistakes I had made and felt worse and worse, caught in a negative cycle. I finally accepted that I had been a failure, that I was awkward around others, that I struggled with relationships, and that I was addicted to gambling. Rather than being hard on myself, I embraced my reality and allowed myself to admit that the challenges I faced were real and not something I couldn't control. I began to believe that I was finally starting to feel a bit better about these issues and that I would eventually be entirely okay with them, even if I wasn't at that moment. I also started exercising and tried various medications to help me mentally, but I never stayed on them because they were not a long-term solution. Now I have stopped gambling. I am in good shape. My relationships are stronger and healthier, and I feel fine every day. The biggest external influences for me were the right medication at the right time and exercise. The worse I felt, the more I pushed myself to work on my physical health, which in turn improved my mental well-being. Exercising naturally releases endorphins into the body. Anyway, that is my story, and I hope it may help you in some way. Depression can be relentless. Believe that you will come through it and keep pushing forward. And exercise. Story 25. There are multiple types of depression: chronic, seasonal, and reactive. Depending on the type of depression you have, you may not overcome it completely, but you can learn to live with it. For some, it involves learning to lift themselves up and walk again. It is challenging, but it is achievable. Regardless of the type of depression, there is hope for you. Story 26. I won't say I have overcome it, but I am doing well despite having major depressive disorder. It is chronic and cyclic. Coping and management are key. I have 2 rules. Don't trigger it and don't make it other people's problem. Story 27. I found the answer. I reached my destination, and I want to go there right now. I will continue until I reach the end. Story 28. Trauma therapy addresses subconscious issues. Discussing your problems is sometimes not sufficient to tackle the underlying challenges. I am grateful to have a highly skilled therapist. Story 29. I struggled with high anxiety and severe depression, and I was drinking hard liquor every day. I was destroying myself. I stopped drinking hard liquor, entered therapy, started medication, and found a stable job that suits my personality. I experienced extreme hardship, and it was not pleasant. I have gradually turned my life around. I have a loving family, recently got engaged, and we have an amazing dog named Marley. I am also in great shape and have lost weight. Story 30. You cannot beat it. It will come and go as it pleases. I stay on my medication and live as healthily as I can. Story 31. That is not how depression works. Depression never goes away. There is no overcoming it. Instead, you develop ways to manage it, and those methods vary greatly from person to person. Story 32. If you have it clinically, you will never truly beat it or get rid of it. However, if you find the perfect combination of medications for your brain, then you are usually in a good place. It is just extremely difficult to do. It is easier said than done. Story 33. I started using psychedelics, specifically mushrooms. One day, I realized that while all these terrible things are true, the only person who can fix them is me. If I abdicate that responsibility, I will live a life of emptiness, and the sadness from that will cause me to negatively impact other people's lives. The thought was so horrible that I started taking showers again, and day by day I just get better. Life isn't too hard. Sometimes it's a headache, but it's not hard anymore. Story 34. I don't know if I overcame depression or if I learned to live with it. I no longer take medication as my psychiatrist has ruled that I can note my triggers and use coping mechanisms to manage them. However, I'm not sure that excludes me from the struggles of depression. I still face challenges with it. At times, I feel like it would be nice to just lie in bed all day, and some weekends I do end up staying in bed, especially during high-stress periods. It's reassuring to have a support system that can help me when I'm feeling down. It's comforting to be able to sleep through difficulties and wake up refreshed enough to deal with challenges later. Nevertheless, I can remember a time when depression had a grip on me more than I had a grip on it. It was a very dark period. I spent more time than I should have in at least 3 in-house care facilities to get on the right dose of medication to consider reintegration into normal society. I was late to almost everything because of this, as my depression was directly related to multiple traumas in my life. For instance, I did not get my driver's license until I was almost 19 years old, and even though I started working for friends at the age of 15, I did not secure my first job until I was nearly 20. I ended up juggling 2 jobs while attending school full-time as a way to keep my mind occupied to avoid feeling depressed, essentially ignoring my own symptoms. This led to many issues that I have addressed in counseling to improve myself. I can honestly say the hardest point in my depression was when I was 15 and diagnosed with cancer. Nothing prepared me for hearing, "You have cancer. We don't know what's going to happen, but you have to undergo strong chemotherapy to battle the cancer inside of you. We're not sure if it will work, but we will do everything we can." I had just started high school and was excited to begin my high school journey, only to be confronted with the reality that you might not survive to graduation. That hit me hard. Thankfully, that's all behind me now. I've learned to grow through hardships and rise above my struggles rather than linger in them. I still wouldn't say I have completely overcome depression. I have learned to live with depressive states. Story 35. Help from my family doctor helped me find the right medication, which is called venlafaxine. Coupled with a near-death experience and recovery from alcoholism, I was in a deep depression a few years ago. Now I have a new career and a sober life with my 2 daughters. Story 36. Can a single lonely sailor survive the harsh storms, the blazing sun, and overwhelming solitude? I don't think most people overcome depression. They simply bury it somewhere it can't hurt them anymore. Story 37. It is a daily challenge. You push it away, only for it to linger in the back of your mind, waiting for another opportunity. I simply acknowledge to myself that I am depressed, and from there, I cope and live with it, finding ways to make myself happy. I celebrate every day and week that I manage to fend it off. Story 38. I survived, perhaps pushed back into my shell. I made significant changes in my life to find happiness, which I genuinely have now. Story 39. I like how my therapist described it. Depression is like driving a car, and the depression represents a large hole in the road, like a massive pothole. As the driver of life, some of us get stuck in the hole. Some of us sink into severe depression, while others linger in the hole, trying to pull the car out without understanding how to back the car up. Most of us take medication so we can tow the car out of the hole. Some of us seek therapy to help guide us out of the holes, identify them before we fall in, and learn to back up the car to help patch the holes. Processing deep sadness and accepting that life isn't always okay, and we can solve it either alone or with help. I've experienced depression since childhood, and my family's culture didn't believe in mental health until I was a young adult. It was only after marrying that I received help and reached a better state of mind. Now I also deal with anxiety, but I've been managing it well by starting to accept that I have emotions and that it's okay to feel them. My family expected me to be perfect and never express anything besides happiness. There are many clinical types of depression, and treatment codes are classified in the International Classification of Diseases, 10th revision, for insurance purposes. Each type is treated differently and requires different approaches and methods. I always recommend seeking a psychiatrist if you have depression and demanding answers. You can't make it go away, and each type needs a different treatment. Exposure therapy may work, or medication, or a combination of both. You will never know unless you seek professional help. Story 40. Prescription ketamine, regular therapy sessions, and a psychologist who was willing to work with me have been part of my journey. My depression is still present, but the suicidal thoughts are gone. I began by creating a daily goal list. I reminded myself that it was okay if I didn't complete everything, as even finishing one task was progress. Did I get up? Check. Did I brush my teeth? Check. Did I shower? No, but that's okay. I will try again tomorrow. Story 41. It's the little things. You can't really beat depression, but when you take the time to consider the little things, depression doesn't feel so big. For me, it's not wanting to miss the next episode of my favorite show. It's the crisp, refreshing taste of a soda. It's that sweet feeling of release when I crack my back or neck. The changing of the seasons, the taste of pizza, finding a cool-looking rock. All of these moments matter. Depression makes it easy to focus on the negative aspects of life, so this is when you need to find the good, whatever it may be, to give your mind that positive feeling it needs. Story 42. I took my brother's Vyvanse prescription for a month about 10 years ago. It was the only time in my adult life that I felt not depressed. Story 43. MD mushroom every 4 to 5 days, about 0.1 or 0.2 barely a blip in their world, life shifting in my world. Story 44. I am not formally diagnosed, but I believe I have persistent depressive disorder, which is a long-term form of depression that may have milder but more enduring symptoms. I believe I have had it since I was a child, and I am now 21. Therapy, journaling, and medication helped, and I was incredibly fortunate to have the support of my friends and family. That support is vital for recovery from depression, but maintaining a sense of purpose within myself was what truly helped me sustain happiness without needing constant validation from others. For a long time, I tormented myself mentally. I spent too much time wallowing in the past, thinking about how I could have behaved differently, brooding over previous relationships with people I cared about, and hating how I failed them or how they failed me. I constantly thought, what if I was the person I wanted to be? Then I would have done it right. Instead, I feel like a loser that no one cares about. I made this my identity and couldn't detach from the pain and turmoil I created by dwelling in that dark mental state. It was a form of self-sabotage, a self-fulfilling prophecy. I acted cold or aloof out of fear of attachment, worried that someone I love could hurt me. At the same time, I was desperately seeking connection, which led me to a painful cycle of wanting to connect but feeling too scared to pursue it. Eventually, I internalized this as my identity, thinking, this is who I am. I am a loner whom no one cares about, so I'll just keep doing this because it is comfortable. I had a lot of trouble trusting that my friends cared for me. I closed myself off and believed they hated me or criticized me behind my back. Eventually, I began to work on this mindset because it was too painful to sustain. I started having suicidal thoughts, breakdowns, and panic attacks, having days where I would lie in bed, overwhelmed by the futility of my efforts and everything I could possibly live for. This harmed my perception of my friendships, which deteriorated their quality. My friends began to feel that I hated them or that I would never open up. Despite all this, I ultimately wanted a good life, or at least one I could be satisfied with. We have only one chance, so we need to make the most of it. Even while knowing that, it is difficult to understand how to achieve it. I spent a long time seeking some magical answer or moment that would awaken my true potential, like in a movie where the protagonist gains a new power and everything changes. That never happened. Recovery truly began when I realized that the only way to be happy is to stop hiding and embrace the person I was too ashamed or insecure to be. I know it sounds cliché, but it is real. I dug deep within myself, found the child I had shut away, and allowed him to occupy the place in my heart where there was once an emptiness. Choosing to overcome depression and pursue happiness, even when it feels impossible, is the most significant thing you can do for yourself in that situation. You can watch all the self-help videos you want and try various routines like meditation or cold showers, but recovery only comes when you take consistent action. Finding purpose is also crucial. That is where the child self in my heart idea comes from. I believe everyone has a unique way of being happy, and our greatest challenge is discovering what that happiness looks like. It might help to reflect on what truly made you happy as a child. What ideals do you wish to manifest in reality? You have the power to bring light to those around you, as long as you remember your capability to do so. The mind is incredibly powerful yet fickle. It can cause great harm to oneself and others, but it also has the ability to manifest light in the darkest of times. I have been privileged to receive support, and I understand not everyone will be as fortunate, but I believe everyone has the potential to do this for themselves. Ultimately, each person has a choice in who they are in this world and within their mind. Taking action to pursue happiness, even when you doubt its possibility, is the first step toward manifesting a happier reality. You cannot attain happiness if you do not believe you can pursue it in the first place. Story 45. I went for therapy and learned to recognize and identify depression and how to live with it. I may never fully overcome it, but I learned that it is like a wave. It will come and it will go. The time between the waves is longer now, and when the waves hit, they don't last as long. It has improved. Maybe one day the waves will stop coming, but I doubt it. Story 46. I had been managing with therapy and medication up to this point, but it had been almost a decade. That day involved drugs and alcohol with a friend. We attended a beer festival, then drank absinthe in a historical bar, and took MDMA. The night ended at a friend's house. I found myself sitting in the kitchen alone, completely intoxicated. I discovered a toy gun on the floor, one of those old revolver-looking models made of chromed plastic. I played with it for a while, then put it up to my head and pulled the trigger. That broke me. I started sobbing. Most everyone else was outside, but they came in wondering where I had disappeared. I vaguely remember a couple of friends speaking to me, and my friend left without me, though we were supposed to share a ride home since we lived close to each other. It seems that, through the combination of drugs, alcohol, and mimicry, my brain simulated an attempt. I do not recommend this, but it seemed to initiate my road to recovery. I was eventually diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which influenced my depressive symptoms. Upon reanalyzing the context of this question, I should emphasize that I did not beat depression. By all accounts, it defeated me. I was just fortunate enough to return for a second chance. Story 47. Focused on health and took walks every day. Weightlifting offered great value, but fresh air and sunlight every day helped significantly as well. Story 48. I approached my goals from various angles: exercising, meditating, eating a healthy diet, attending therapy. These strategies have proven to be beneficial primarily in that sequence. Exercising is crucial for short-term benefits. Even a brief walk can make a difference. I believe meditation offers more significant long-term advantages. It extends beyond just mindfulness, as I have delved deeply into it. Story 49. I don't think I can overcome it, but as I read somewhere, if you're still here, you're not struggling with depression. Depression is struggling with you. I might never overcome it, but I will give a strong fight. Story 50. I've been wondering if I'm doing this to myself. Am I refusing to accept something important? Is it better to be stubborn than to accept how things are? Or perhaps I'm simply trying to control myself. Story 51. I wouldn't say I overcame it. I just stubbornly refuse to let it overcome me. Once you know its name and where it resides, you can confront it. The one thing I will promote until the end is this: the body supports the brain. Your one guaranteed working weapon is exercise. Story 52. Some days are better than others. I have spent the majority of my life feeling depressed, primarily due to circumstances. I think the difficult part is coming. I am about to be financially stable for the first time in my life. I have to face the discomfort of consistent happiness and contentment. Let's hope that does not affect me more than the depression has. Story 53. When I was around 35 years old, I experienced a panic attack and emotional breakdown in the middle of a presentation for a long-standing client. I was no longer able to work and had to consult a doctor. I was diagnosed with acute severe depression, prescribed medication, recommended for inpatient treatment and therapy. I followed all these recommendations because I needed to get back to work. In the following years of therapy, I worked through childhood trauma of being sexually assaulted as a 10-year-old boy by a female friend of my mother, familial neglect, and other issues. I was in therapy for about 2 years until I thought I had a handle on things. Within 6 months, I had another breakdown and relapsed. It took me around 1 year to recover again. Since then, I have been maintaining a 1-hour monthly check-in with my psychologist as a safety net. I also stay on a relatively low dose of venlafaxine, as the benefits outweigh the costs. I have been working successfully again, but recently decided to go back to university to study and pursue a completely different career because I want to. A few thoughts come to mind. I was highly functional, and except for my wife, not a single person in my personal and professional environment suspected anything wrong with me until my breakdown. I was successful, well-liked, held a leadership role, and was making good money. Everything seemed great. When my wife urged me to address my depressive moods, I ignored her pleas and told her and myself that I just needed to work harder on fixing myself. When I was walking up and down train stations looking for the best spot to jump in front of a train, calculating the minimum height I needed to jump from for maximum impact, and testing how it felt to lie down on train tracks, I still did not think there was anything wrong with me. Even during therapy, it took me a long time to let go of the idea of recovering quickly. I wanted to be a good patient, the best patient, and I wanted to win the prize for being the fastest, most efficient recovering patient, which is nonsense. I will likely stay on medication and visit a psychiatrist or psychologist regularly, but that's okay. The benefits of doing so far outweigh the costs of not doing it. A strong indicator of my progress was a shift in mindset. For a long time, I believed I had to fix myself because I was broken to be more productive, better, and useful. Now, I imagine what it would be like if certain behaviors were not holding me back, such as emotionally triggered binge eating and feeling good in my body. At the beginning of my therapy journey, I was asked to say out loud, "I am allowed to feel good," but I was utterly unable to do so. The closest I could manage was, "It probably doesn't bother anyone if I don't always feel terrible." Dealing with depression means adjusting goals to what is appropriate at the time. I was on a high dose of escitalopram for a while, which had severe side effects, but it allowed me to make progress. Now, I am on a different medication at a much lower dosage, and while there are still side effects, it's manageable. We will try to lower the dosage again and see what happens. Maybe it will work out, maybe it won't. Then we will adjust accordingly. Story 54. I lost my mom when I was 16, and 2.5 years later, my dad passed away. I couldn't deal with it all. I wasn't prepared to live alone without support if something went wrong. My former partner didn't provide me with any support either, but she was everything to me. I worked hard to make her happy, neglecting my own needs and pushing aside my problems, focusing solely on her. I stopped taking care of myself and lost my apartment. I didn't have the courage to talk about it because I felt ashamed. Bit by bit, I felt worse as she made negative comments about things I liked or offered passive-aggressive remarks that brought me down. I ended up agreeing with everything she said and isolating myself more and more, suppressing my emotions until I became a shell of my former self. Eventually, I ran out of money and wanted to pull myself together to get back on track. As soon as I distanced myself from her, I received countless messages saying she missed me and that I was absent from her life. So, I focused on her again and started lying, claiming everything was fine while my life was falling apart in the background. Skipping ahead, I ended the relationship to get my life together. Once I regained some stability with a new apartment and starting to train, we reconnected. It turned out to be a significant mistake, leading to similar results as before. I mostly didn't seek psychological help during that time. Occasionally, I did, but the treatment was limited to medication, which unfortunately wasn't a viable option for me. This meant I had to rebuild everything, from being homeless to getting my own place. I decided to pursue inpatient therapy, which was the best decision of my life. I feel much better now. I have learned to be at peace with myself and to feel again, though not as intensely as I recall from the past. I was able to process and accept the deaths of my parents. I now view the relationship with my former partner as one of my biggest mistakes, especially after therapy, when my idealized view of her was shattered. Now, I'm on my path, enjoying the small things and starting to embrace life again, even if in my own subdued way. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.